Good day, everyone. Welcome to Real Conservative Headline News. I'm your host, Nathaniel Rajkumar, starting off locally here in Trinidad and Tobago. Trinidad and Tobago has the support of more than 100 nations, including CARICOM member states, in its bid for a non-permanent seat on the United Nations Security Council for the 2027 to 2028 term. Minister of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs, Sean Sobers, said in the Senate on Wednesday. The country has officially declared its candidacy for the seat, which falls under the Latin American and Caribbean group allocation. The secret ballot vote is scheduled for June 3rd, 2026, during the 80th session of the United Nations General Assembly. The United Nations General Assembly is really extremely far woke and supporters of jihadists and communists at this point in time. I don't know how good of an idea this really is. And I don't even know if they will end up getting that position, because once you're a Trump supporter, once you're a conservative, it's unlikely you will get that position there. But who knows? I wish them all the best. I really do wish them all the best.
Approval has been granted for Trinidad and Tobago to bid for a non-permanent seat on the United Nations Security Council for the period of 2027 to 2028. During his contribution in the Senate on Wednesday, Minister of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs Sean Sobers recognized the significance of this seat, noting the government's commitment in addressing global issues.
As a member of the UN, we have adhered to the charter of the body, unlike what has been said previously. Trinidad and Tobago appreciates and recognizes the magnitude of the responsibility bestowed on the Security Council. And for small states like Trinidad and Tobago, the maintenance of an international rules-based order and security is of paramount importance. It is the government's primary view that we can only be better together if we confront complex and evolving global issues head-on instead of burying our heads in the sand.
Minister Sobers said the country's campaign is gaining momentum, with areas of focus aligned with objectives of respect for regional and international rule of law, security, protection of vulnerable communities, and addressing emerging threats of illicit trafficking of small arms, light weapons, and artificial intelligence.
Once elected, we would ensure that the voices and perspective of all states are meaningfully represented in the work of the Security Council. Trinidad and Tobago is in the process of campaigning for its candidature as a non-permanent member of the UNSC for the term, as aforesaid. The areas of national priorities which will impact the role played by Trinidad and Tobago are consistent with its stated objective of respect for regional and international rule of law, security, protection of vulnerable communities, and addressing emerging threats of illicit trafficking of small arms, light weapons, and artificial intelligence.
He added that this country's bid is currently uncontested with a group of Latin America and the Caribbean. Minister Sobers reaffirmed Trinidad and Tobago's stance on maintaining cordial bilateral relations and continue to maintain warm relations with partners. The United Nations Security Council is one of the world's most powerful bodies, responsible for maintaining international peace and security, with 15 members including 10 elected for 2-year terms. Faith Chariot, TTT News.
Minister of Public Utilities Barry Padarath has unveiled a comprehensive program to tackle water challenges affecting citizens nationwide. Speaking at Thursday's post-cabinet media briefing, the minister announced plans to expand the tank farm program in the Muruga, Tableland, Mayaro, and Kamutu Manzanilla constituencies. Wonderful news. He noted that the pilot project was conducted in the Siparia constituency, where described as one of the most underserved areas over the years. Other areas expected to see relief include the East-West Corridor, Northwest Trinidad, Central Trinidad and Tobago. So that, of course, PNM, PHS, you all can complain. They're coming to serve you as well. Bear in mind, he also said that they're going to construct a whole lot more desalination plants, which will also provide water. But you know, the PNM, PHS here in Trinidad and Tobago, they will always find a way to be able to criticize what the UNC administration is doing.
The cabinet today has agreed to expand that project into other communities and constituencies, again utilizing the data of WASA. in terms of those that are most severely impacted. I think many persons will agree with me that while we continue to experience challenges across the length and breadth of the country, some areas seem to be operating at a greater degree of service and delivery than others. And therefore, I am pleased to announce this afternoon that those tank farms will now be established in other constituencies. Those constituencies are Maruga Tabelland, Mayaro, Kumoto Manzanilla, and there are future plans for others in the southeastern parts of the island, which include constituencies such as Naparima and also Sangre Grande. As we go into the dry season, there is an increased reliance on truck-borne supply of water. I have taken particular notice of some of the complaints that we have received from members of parliament on both sides of the aisle, and therefore there will be some mitigating factors. Having shared with you the expansion of these water tank farms, I will also share with you the cost to Trinidad and Tobago. These tank farms will be established in these various constituencies. So far, 4 have been identified for Maruga Tabelland, Mayaro, 2 have been identified for them, and Kumoto Manzanilla, 2 have been identified in that constituency as well. For the construction of these tank farms and operational costing, we are looking at $7.5 million in terms of investing in establishing these tank farms. The locations have already been identified, and I'm told at this point in time, WASA is at the stage of procurement in terms of attempting to execute the project. Based on what occurred in the last constituency, with respect to the establishing of the 4 tank farms in Siparia, the time frame that you're looking at was 6 weeks, and therefore those persons who will be successful in the procurement stage of these tank farms, they will be held to ensure that they also fall within a 6-week turnaround period. In the meanwhile, we have increased significantly, as I've mentioned before, truck-borne water supply in these areas. Now, this is dealing with southeastern, south, and the southwestern part of the island. With respect to some of the other areas that are hard hit, the East-West corridor in particular, there are some constituencies. Suffice to say that before former Minister Imbert was placed in the Ministry of Public Utilities for the short 1 month before the general election, former Minister Marvin Gonzalez would have served that constituency of Bonnet West for 5 years, and he would have also served as the Minister of Public Utilities. Having failed to deliver upon the completion of the Bonnet wastewater treatment plant, this is a project that has been identified by WASA, that Cabinet has given its support to through its funding to ensure that we bring this project to fruition, to bring a greater degree of relief to citizens across the East-West corridor. While it will be resident in the constituency of which is now Aruka Maloney, formerly Bonnet West, what you would see happening is that there will be a greater supply of water through the Bonnet West treatment plant. The government just does not stop there. About a couple days ago, at the last sitting of the House of Representatives, in a matter on the adjournment, former Minister of Public Utilities, one member for Diego Martin Northeast, Mr. Colm Imbert, raised the issue of water in his own constituency. Suffice to say that a number of the major infrastructural projects that were required in northwest Trinidad in particular were not carried out, and therefore the government is reviewing through WASA a number of the major infrastructural projects, not exclusive only to Diego Martin Northeast, but across the length and breadth of Trinidad and Tobago. This was something that we promised in the general election of 2025. It took us some time because one has to identify the funding, one has to identify the projects, and therefore only then we will be able to kickstart. So in terms of the tank farms, these are short-term measures that we will be investing in so that this untenable situation, and it is not a quick fix. In the Parliament, I did indicate in the matter and the adjournment, it is not simple as turning on a switch. It is a situation that has been left to languish for 10 years without any delivery, without any focus on changing out a lot of the aged infrastructure. And therefore, utilizing the funding that we have available going into the next financial year, and even within this financial year, I can share with the nation that there are specific projects that we are looking at, and therefore the wastewater treatment plant in Bonnet West is one of those that will impact significantly on the east-west corridor. You are also looking at the pumps in Diego Martin that the member for Diego Martin Northeast spoke ad nauseum about, but did nothing to alleviate the problem, whether he served as Minister of Finance or Minister of Public Utilities. And therefore, it was a bit surprising to hear the Honourable Member speak the last day in Parliament, knowing that he sat in a position that would have allowed these projects to come to fruition, that would have brought relief to constituents and citizens across the northwestern part of Trinidad, in particular in terms of where he actually serves as a Member of Parliament. Central Trinidad. The Cabinet has agreed to the upgrade of the Freeport water treatment plant. This upgrade of the Freeport water treatment plant will be at an estimated tune of about $20 million. WASA will be going through the procurement phase, but in terms of the first phase of the water treatment plant in Freeport, this will impact several constituencies inclusive of Caroni Central, Tabaquite, Chaguanas East, Claxton Bay, Couva North, Couva South. There seems to be a challenge in the Caroni Central area in particular because of the topography of that constituency. Again, a lot of the aged infrastructure at the Freeport water treatment plant have been left to languish. It is a concern particularly with the reliance of water coming out of the Salcott, and that in itself was also another situation that was left to languish without government through WASA looking at the lens of how you can utilize the facility at Point Lisas, that is the Salcott, to service other parts of Trinidad in the central area, as opposed to the traditional systems that when it first started it would have supplied. So therefore additional pipelaying and so on would be pursued that would allow for the Salcott to have a greater service supply to several of the central constituencies that will also be impacted by the Freeport water treatment plant. So that is a $20 million injection that government is looking at. With respect to Tobago, there will be work commencing on the Hillsborough Dam, but also government did indicate very early o'clock that we'll be investing in 3 desal plants. One is earmarked for Charlottesville, Tobago. I will be going over to Tobago over the next week or so to meet with the Honourable Chief Secretary and the Secretary responsible for public utilities to look at that Charlottesville desalination plant. This will also impact on the service delivery across that part of the island, which continues to be plagued by an annual issue, particularly when we are in the dry season. The other 2, one is earmarked for the constituency of Maruga-Tableland, which will have significant impact on the Navid Dam. Right now there is an over-reliance on the Navid Dam, and this would allow particularly freeing up water in the Barrackpore end of South Trinidad, which continues to see a significant challenge with respect to pipe-borne water. Also, Naparima, Princestown, Maruga-Tableland, San Fernando East, Urupuch West, Labre, Faizabad, Point Fortin. This will supplement the existing supply that is currently, or in some instances not happening, that will alleviate a lot of the problems in the southern part of the island. That will give us a long-term relief in terms of a 24/7 supply in many instances, or at least a 24-hour supply every 4 days. So that is the long-term plan with respect to the injection of 3 desalination plants across Trinidad and Tobago. The expressions of interest will go out at the start of April. We're already on the 2nd of April. I'm hoping by next week, I've been advised by WASA, that the expressions of interest will go out for those desalination plants, and therefore we will work expeditiously to ensure that these projects, in terms of legacy projects, long-term projects, will come into fruition in the shortest possible time. These projects, first, when you look at the tank farms, they are expected in the constituency of Maruga Tablan. It's expected that it will impact over 1,000 households. When you translate that into terms of the communities that it will impact, thousands of persons will be impacted, at least 10,000 persons. With respect to Mayaro, and I'm sure the member for Mayaro is very happy to hear that, a number of projects already happening in his constituency. It is expected that 1,200 households will be impacted by the desalination plant there, and you are looking at about over 20 to 25,000 persons benefiting from that project. In terms of Kumoto Mansinilla, again, you are looking at over 1,000 households impacted by these tank farms.
Good news for members of the construction industry. Minister of Land and Legal Affairs Saddam Hussein said Cabinet has approved the removal of oversight by the County Medical Officer of Health from the construction planning permit process to reduce bureaucratic delays. Minister Hussein shared details on Thursday's post-cabinet media briefing. Once again, this is good news for the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, and it doesn't matter whether you're a PNM supporter or a UNC supporter, you will benefit from this. Regional news up next.
Those who are involved in the construction industry, in particular those who have made applications for permits and so on, approvals for the construction of homes, commercial premises, and other matters. Cabinet today would have agreed for the removal of the oversight of the County Medical Officers of Health, which is called the CMOH, from the construction planning permit system to reduce bureaucratic delays due to duplication of rules discharged by other government agencies, and to promote the ease of doing business in Trinidad and Tobago. As you would recall, the Cabinet adopted the United National Congress 2025 Manifesto as the official policy framework of the government, and the framework prioritizes inter alia the involvement and improvement of the citizens' experience when accessing government services. In this regard, a modern construction permitting system that promotes efficiency while reducing bureaucracy is required to boost development and investment in the country. The existing construction permitting process in Trinidad and Tobago requires applicants to obtain various clearances or approvals from multiple statutory agencies prior to the issuance of a completion certificate by the relevant regional corporation. Eliminating the requirement for CMOH approval will significantly reduce the average processing time for completion certificates, given that sanitation and risk to public health are now mitigated through assessment by other regulatory bodies. These include the EMA, WASA, the Drainage Division, the Building Inspectorate, engineers, as well as the public health inspectors attached to the municipal corporations. The online automated construction permitting system, developed TT, which is managed by the Town and Country Planning Division, brought an end to paper-based application and introduced a new era of digital transformation in 2020. Developed TT serves as a 24/7 permitting platform for processing development applications, commencing with the submission of an online application for the development to the TCPD pursuant to the Town and Country Planning Act. Where planning permission is granted, subject to conditions, the development proposal is then submitted by the applicant for further processing by other government agencies on developed TT, culminating upon satisfaction of requirements, with the issue of completion certificates by regional corporations in the island of Trinidad and the Public Health Services Department of the THA in the case of Tobago. Developed TT currently incorporates 29 state agencies, including the CMOH, 29, for planning permission, as authorized agents of the Ministry of Health. So CMOH is the Ministry of Health agent on the planning permission side, with the responsibility for matters pertaining to public health, sanitation, and waste disposal. This requirement stems from a very archaic piece of legislation. It's the 1917 Public Health Ordinance and its subsidiary legislation, which still governs us today in 2025. So we use a 1917 piece of law in 2025, which allows or discharges the Ministry of Health the responsibility and its authorized officers for public health approvals. This public health ordinance is an overarching piece of law, outdated, and together with its associated regulations and so on, we as a government realize that there have been a lot of duplication and outdated ways in which planning permissions are granted. For example, in terms of the duplication and so on, I will give that going down, but the public health function is exercised by public health inspectors attached to the public health department in what we call the Legacy 4. So Port of Spain, San Fernando, Arima, and Point Fortin have public health inspectorates. However, the other regional corporations in Trinidad rely on the CMOH for approvals to fulfill the public health function and the ordinance. Given the government's aim for development through its revitalization plan, the accelerated housing project by the HTC, and now the housing project that is being conducted by Landmark TT through the Ministry of Land and Legal Affairs, we need a more robust and expeditious system in order for approvals. So, what we have identified as a government is the areas of duplication, and I'll go through some of those duplication with you now. So, for example, if you have to look at the construction of building, structure, and foundation, the CMOH looks at it, the TCPD looks at it, the regional corporation looks at it, WASA looks at it. If you look at space, light, and ventilation, building, site coverage, habitable space, building line setback, CMOH looks at that, TCPD looks at that, the regional corporation looks at that. Building height, CMOH, TCPD, regional corporation. Open spaces, CMOH, TCPD, regional corporation. Plot sizes, CMOH, TCPD, regional corporation, WASA, and drainage division. Sewage, CMOH, TCPD, regional corporation, WASA, and drainage. And drainage for lots, CMOH, TCPD, regional corporation, and the drainage division. So you understand that there is a level of duplication. I am informed by certain regional corporations that in one of those corporations, 200 plans are awaiting approval from the CMOH. I am told that the average time to get a plan out of the CMOH is around 8 months. Some persons have reported that it takes them up to 2 years to get a plan out of that, meaning that is going to slow down the developmental program of the government and even private citizens who are applying for permission with respect to construction of their homes and so on. So we believe that there are already agencies such as the EMA, WASA, the regional corporations, the public health inspectorate of those regional corporations to do that work. I would tell you one of my experiences as minister. When we were dealing with the Carney 1975 residential lot distribution, I had all of those agencies in a room with me, and the CMOH was there, which happens to be a medical doctor. And they're telling me that a medical doctor must give us advice on civil engineering. A medical doctor is telling you how to build your house. That is why we are saying that we have to modernize the system now. because that 1917 ordinance is totally outdated. In fact, I'm told that in one regional corporation that they failed a plan based on ventilation blocks. I don't know if people still use ventilation blocks when they're building modern homes and so on, but they fail a plan just because the person did not have ventilation blocks and everything else was in order. And to get that out of there will take them another 8 months, because when they query a plan with defects and so on, it has to be resubmitted before you can move on for your final approval. So this progressive government, led by our Honorable Prime Minister, Mrs. Kamala Persad-Bissessar, we have agreed as a government to remove this requirement for CMOH. However, it requires us to go to the Parliament, which we will be doing very soon. The Attorney General, through the Cabinet, has received the instructions for the drafting of the relevant legislation. So, in essence, we will be removing the CMOH from the construction permitting system to reduce the bureaucratic delays arising from duplication of roles discharged by other government agencies. And also, which is very important, we will now be removing the requirement for the Minister of Health through the planning procedure to grant approval for undersized lots. What is an undersized lot? A lot that measures less than 5,000 square feet in area. So we are going to remove that requirement, because by the current law, the Minister of Health has to give the approval for undersized lots. So this is good news. It will increase efficiency, remove bureaucracy, and ensure that persons who apply for their planning permission, the passage of this very critical piece of legislation will now have a greater ease of doing business to boost our construction sector and the ease of doing business.
Weather report, Trinidad and Tobago. Friday, April 3rd, RD 2026. General situation. Expect generally sunny, hazy, and breezy conditions across both islands. While the morning will start fair, moisture moving in will bring scattered showers from late morning through the afternoon. Island forecasts. Trinidad, Piarco. Condition, sunny/hazy with a 30 to 40% chance of afternoon showers. Max temp, 32 degrees Celsius feels like 35 degrees Celsius. Min temp, 23 degrees Celsius. Winds, ENE 15-35 kilometers per hour. Tobago, Crown Point. Condition, sunny/breezy with a 20% chance of isolated showers. Max temp, 31 degrees Celsius feels like 34 degrees Celsius. Min temp, 24 degrees Celsius. Winds, ENE 20-40 kilometers per hour. Marine and hazards. Sea state, moderate. Waves 1.5 meters to 2.0 meters in open waters. Tides, spring tides are in effect. Use caution near coastlines. Hazards, localized street flash flooding possible during heavy downpours in Trinidad.
The Zero Hunger Trust Fund in St. Vincent and the Grenadines is commemorating its 10th anniversary as it looks ahead to expanding its impact over the next decade. Prime Minister Dr. Godwin Friday has called for the organization to be integrated into the country's broader policy framework. That's why he's doing a pretty good job. And you must know when somebody is really doing a pretty good job, a lot of the times they basically kind of align themselves with the United National Congress. I mean, I'm not saying directly, but I did see UNC lawyers basically representing the Prime Minister recently, and PNM lawyers, wouldn't mention who, but PNM lawyers were defending or representing the opposition party in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So all that gives an idea of who you're supposed to kind of support. Not totally. I'm not just saying to base it on that alone, because just like in Trinidad, UNC doing Tata, I will tell them that they're doing Tata. But in general, we all know that, and I've said that from the very beginning, even when I went through the phase of exposing the stuff that UNC is doing that I don't support, but I've passed that now. If I need to bring it back up again, I will do it. But at this point in time, that has already been done. I've already addressed it. So I'm back to reporting current news, which a lot of the times is positive at the end of the day, because the UNC and these kind of different political parties serve their country much better than a lot of the other political parties, especially in Trinidad and Tobago, whole lot better than the People's National Movement.
After a decade of measurable progress in food security in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, the Zero Hunger Trust Fund is now being challenged to achieve even more in a shorter time. Speaking at the 10th anniversary and the National Zero Hunger Dialogue, Prime Minister Dr. Godwin Friday reaffirmed his government's commitment to advancing the initiative and recommended that the organization be incorporated into a wider national policy structure.
That in the Zero Hunger Trust Fund, that they're thinking ahead. And some of the initiatives that I would wish to see executed, completed. We said the next decade, but I'm saying within the next 5 years. The Zero Hunger Trust Fund, it must be formally integrated into our national social protection and food security operations.
The Prime Minister also highlighted the global challenges that could impact St. Vincent and the Grenadines, stressing the need for preparedness. He encouraged increased backyard gardening as a practical step towards strengthening food resilience. Minister of Education Philip Jackson commended the ZHTF's work, noting the nutritional value and importance of locally grown food.
Let's take full ownership of this thing. In other words, in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, let's make food security a big thing, a community thing, a community effort. Let's get excited about it. Let's get our goats to the youths. Let's get them developing their own vegetable patch. It must become an obsession.
Minister of Tourism Kishore Shallow emphasized the link between food security and tourism, welcoming the expansion of ZHTF's programs.
What must be done to accelerate progress of this magnificent program? The next decade demands that we move beyond individual interventions and towards integrated, system-wide solutions that leave absolutely no one behind.
Over the past 10 years, more than 400 students have benefited from the initiative, with 75 gaining internship placements. Director and Chief Executive Officer of the Zero Hunger Trust Fund, Safia Hornbeek, acknowledged that while progress has been made, much more work remains.
Recognizing that the future of food system depends on leadership, creativity, innovation of the next generation. And importantly, we will create a space for open dialogue, bringing together voices from across sectors to interrogate our approaches, challenge our assumptions, and co-create solutions for the future.
It is hoped that the ZHTF will continue to play a key role in reducing poverty and lowering the high food import bill currently faced by St. Vincent and the Grenadines. For SVGTV News, Larissa Pugsley-Kidd.
Jamaica's Tourism Workers Pension Scheme has accumulated more than $6 billion in just 2.5 years. Tourism and Minister Edmund Bartlett has disclosed. Addressing the reopening of Half Moon Resort on Thursday, Bartlett said the fund is projected to reach $10 billion by 2027, at which point the government intends to introduce a dedicated health insurance program for tourism employees. I wonder if the Jamaican people know that it's the same white man, colonials, who are coming to their country to spend US and UK and Canadian dollars, which benefits you. And it's always bad talking them. I don't understand how people can be so counterproductive, you know. You're stuck back in the past, still studying about the past and our colonial past, as though everything about colonial colonial past it was bad. Our colonialism was bad. There were certain aspects that was bad, but not everything. Especially, I always say, I'm thankful that the gospel of Jesus Christ was spread throughout the world via colonialism. The president of the Guyana Oil and Gas Energy Chamber, Mr. Maniram Prashad, acknowledges the recent updates provided by His Excellency President Dr. Irfan Ali regarding ongoing discussions between the government of Guyana and Suriname on the issue of fishing licenses for Guyanese fisherfolk. GOGEC fully supports the government of Guyana's measured and diplomatic approach in addressing this long-standing matter. The official went on to say, we recognize the importance of maintaining strong bilateral relations with Suriname while ensuring that the livelihoods of Guyanese citizens, particularly those in the fishing communities along the Corentyne and Berbice coast, are protected and sustained. The Chamber notes that the issues of access to traditional fishing grounds remains a critical concern for many families whose economic well-being depends on these activities. The current limitations on licensing have placed additional financial strain on fisherfolk, underscoring the urgency of a mutually beneficial resolution. As I said, I think it's on my other channel a little while ago. What's going on with Suriname? Suriname is Maduro partner, something like that, or they're vexed that Guyana is aligning themselves with the United States of America. They're vexed that Maduro was arrested or something like that, so they're trying to spite Guyana. What's going on with Suriname? People who are watching from Guyana, comment over videos and let me know what you think going on with Suriname. The Department of Emergency Management in Barbados is accelerating its hurricane preparedness plans as forecasts signal a potentially active Atlantic season. Oh God, but more hurricanes again this year. With Director Kerry Hines urging the public to step up their own readiness efforts. I mean, that's important advice. They can't come to everybody's home and secure it for them. At a presentation to 4 charities that benefited from last week's Tsunami Run 5K Run Walk, Hines told, and that's not Fitzgerald Hines, Hines told reporters the agency has already ramped up its readiness measures following a series of extreme weather events last year. We continue to pray for all the peoples of our Caribbean region, that God will protect them and spare countries that have already faced a lot of turmoil in recent years. Jamaica, boy, wow, I think it was 2 years in a row. A Beryl the year before, I believe. And then Melissa last year. Protect them in Jesus' name. And protect our country. Continue to protect our country as well in Jesus' name. The Ministry of Health and Wellness in the Bahamas has signed a contract with Winder Construction for the construction of a new $4 million advanced medical clinic in the Berry Islands, once again during an election season. The project is part of a broader $43 million government initiative. Now, don't get me wrong, if it is I see, they continue to do so. If they win the elections and they continue to do so, I'm doing this good job afterwards, then it's just part of their nature of that government. People from Bahamas, if you're viewing me, let me know what usually happens. Is this just like the PNM in Trinidad? Or you could start these projects when it's election time? Or does it happen throughout the entire term in office? So the project is part of a broader $43 million government initiative. Construction is estimated to take approximately 14 months to complete. This development coincides with a significant economic revival for the Berry Islands, including a $35 million investment from U.S. investors for Great Harbor Clay. Bahamas, I must visit Bahamas one of these good days. The new clinic is seen as a foundational step for delivering services under the National Health Insurance Program to local residents.
This particular clinic will have diagnostics, it will have labs, it will have ground transportation, and it will also be connected to a robust telemedicine network where doctors in the Berry Islands can have consultation with specialists at the Princess Margaret Hospital to advise particularly any urgent and emergency care prior to airlift to the capital. So we're trying to get away from this concept of where our clinics in the Family Islands is a mere referral service. We will do a lot more on island, and patients from the Berry Islands would not have to fly back and forth to Nassau for simple things like blood tests.
Darville is confident it will fill the healthcare gap on the island and its nearby keys.
It would also support the surrounding touristic developments on Coco Key and Great Stirrup Key, and by extension the other keys in the Berry Islands.
The minister acknowledged the project is one long awaited by locals, but says it's only one of a chain of clinics recently erected on various Family Islands. Adding the construction of the clinic will bring about multiple employment opportunities for Berry Islanders. We know from the past, from some of the touristic developments, that the technical expertise is on the island. And I'm certain that Mr. Winder will do his best to ensure that many of the skilled workers on the Berry Islands benefit financially
from this particular project.
It's a pleasure for us to accept this contract on behalf of the community, my community of the Berry Islands. It's been a long time coming, and it's never late. I'm sure my community will be proud to know that this is finally in progress and construction is ready to be commenced. We have the means and the facilities and the manpower in the community to get this done.
Director of Public Health Philip Swan says the erection of these clinics across the Family Islands are also meant to help the ministry cut back on the second most expensive item in its budget, air emergency transportation. Given the project's timeline coincides with the upcoming general election, execution could be affected. Danielle Dean, Eyewitness News.
International news now. President Trump has fired Attorney General Pam Bondi, and Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche will serve as interim Attorney General until a successor is confirmed. While Trump publicly praised Bondi as a great American patriot and stated she is transitioning to a much-needed and important new job in the private sector, reports indicate he was deeply frustrated with her performance. She was failing to do things that he wanted her to do, people. And it begs the question, why? And I agree with Trump's decision here. Now, of course, people will say, who are you to agree? I don't know. It doesn't matter. This is my channel, and I can see if I agree with something or not.
Good evening, I'm Bill Malugin, and this is your Fox News Report. Pam Bondi is out as U.S. Attorney General. President Trump announcing her firing today. Bondi, a Trump loyalist, will be moving on to the private sector. The president praised Bondi's leadership in tackling crime across the U.S. Meanwhile, Deputy AG Todd Blanche will be stepping into the role until a successor is confirmed. President Trump says all DHS workers will be paid soon, not just TSA agents. The president is planning to sign an order to pay employees who have been working for 48 days now without a paycheck due to the partial government shutdown. The Senate sent its bill to fund most of DHS back to the House, but the record-breaking shutdown is expected to continue with lawmakers on recess. Iran is launching more strikes across the Middle East as President Trump claims its military has been decimated. Iran hit targets in Israel and in Gulf countries. Israel also launched missiles at the headquarters of Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps, killing a senior commander. Body cam video shows the moments after Tiger Woods' rollover crash in Florida. Woods is seen taking a field sobriety test and later being handcuffed. Officers also removed 2 pills from his pocket. Woods was arrested on a DUI charge, and he's pleaded not guilty. The 4 Artemis astronauts are orbiting the Earth and guiding the spacecraft after yesterday's successful launch. NASA will fire an engine, which puts the capsule on a path to loop around the moon in a few days. In Washington, I'm Bill Malugin. Have a great night.
President Trump said, U.S. military experts told me that if I didn't strike Iran in time, Israel would not exist today. I did what no other president was willing to do. They made mistakes, and I am correcting them, he said. The regime in Iran refused every attempt to reach a deal a whole year. Trump tried with them, people. And for that reason, I ordered the launch of Operation Midnight Hammer in June of last year. That was just like a warning, eh? That was a warning, and they didn't take heed. The Ayatollah terrorist regime you're talking about didn't take heed. The Iranians were close to having missiles that could reach the United States and Europe. They had extremely lethal weapons, and we took them away from them. Bear in mind, people, President Trump is wonderful how you're standing with Israel and saying that you are there to help protect them. But don't worry yourself, because the time is going to come when, of course, maybe by 2028, America will no longer support Israel. And the kings of read Ezekiel 38, President Donald Trump. And you will see that the kings of the north, including Russia, will attempt to invade Israel. And Iran will be there as well. So even though they might be under control for a while, for the next 3 years or so, time is going to come when Iran is still the radicals in Iran. A lot of Iranian people love Israel and love Western civilization, but they are the radicals. The radicals are still in the millions there. And they're going to find a way to take control of Iran and still gang up with Russia, whether it's Putin or whoever, will be the leader then, and Turkey and so forth. And they will attempt to invade Israel. What God will do is supernaturally intervene on behalf of his people in Israel. Nothing is going to happen to Israel, Donald Trump. You don't have to worry yourself. Israel will never be wiped off the map again. Now for the interesting facts segment, a heartwarming family moment unfolded in Kentucky as 98-year-old Cordelia May Hawkins, known as Maydell, met her great-great-great-granddaughter for the first time. What a blessed age to reach. I pray that she reaches 100 and even passes it in Jesus' name. She gently held 7-week-old Xavier Danielle during a nursing home visit that brought together 6 generations of women. Why are the women living in a nursing home, though, people? Oh, God, boy. Why Americans like to do that? Now, Trinidadians do that as well. Huh? Those are the higher class, you know. Nah, man. I mean, unless it's because of a medical condition, I can understand that. But other than that, keep your elderly people in your homes. They can be a little miserable at times or whatsoever, but they are family. Come now, man. The rare gathering became even more special as all were girls. Family members described Maydell as joyful and calm, even soothing the baby when she fussed. The touching moment captured in photos beautifully reflects love, legacy, and a powerful bond shared across generations. Well, show the woman a little more love by bringing her back into your home, please, somebody.
Welcome to Real Conservative Headline News Travel Adventures. Kilo Bay is a stunning, rugged hidden gem on the Kona coast featuring turquoise waters, black lava rock, and a high likelihood of swimming with Hawaiian green sea turtles, honu. It offers a tranquil escape with black sand beaches and a freshwater hidden gem called Queen's Bath. Expect an intimate experience as this spot is less crowded, though it requires a short hike to reach. Key highlights and tips. Turtle Haven. The bay is a major sanctuary for sea turtles. You will likely see them near the shore. The hike. It's a 1 to 2 mile walk along the coastline, passing black sand beaches. Wear sturdy shoes to walk over the rough lava rocks. Queen's Bath. A must-see freshwater pool tucked away for a refreshing dip, hidden near the walkway. No services. There are no lifeguards and limited facilities, porta-potties only. Bring plenty of water, sunscreen, and snacks. Respect the sacred. This is a sacred area. Avoid using sunscreen before swimming in the pools to protect the, as suggested in. Access, located near mile marker 81 or 83 on Highway 19, depending on if you want to walk to the lagoon or the bay. Hope you enjoyed today's video, and we'll see you again tomorrow as our journey around the world continues.
Folks, that brings us to the end of today's headline news. Thanks again to everyone who continues to support my content. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Stay blessed and stay safe, most of all, in Jesus' name.